Hello and welcome to the 7th video of the Perun Santis video series. Today I will read verses 81 to 96 and talk about a change of heart, the burden of freedom, and the false priest of Dostoyevsky. And we will dive deeper into the matter of human psychology, because understanding the world begins with understanding yourself. And I raise my glass to the mighty and the strong Perun Thunderer. Verse 81. And sage Svetozar of the glorious Svetarusa kin said to Perun ever charming, "Tell us, Perun father, what will happen with the sacred land of the great race and the faith of our ancestors?" Yeah, just note the words faith, what's in your heart, and face, your outside appearance, are very similar. Tell us, light God, when grave times come for the sons of the heavenly kin, who will then save the sacred land of the great race and the descendants of the heavenly kin? The God most wise spoke these words. Be aware, people, the stream of time river will bring grave times to the sacred land of the great race. And only the sages, guardians of ancient knowledge and secret wisdom, will be left in this land. Because humans will use the force of the elements of Midgard and destroy Small Moon and their beautiful world. And the Svarogic cycle will turn and human souls will be horrified. So this is talking about Atlantis. Yeah. So the Svarogic cycle will turn and human souls will be horrified. Now this is very interesting to understand what exactly happened here. So when they destroyed their land and they destroyed Little Moon and everything was poisoned, all the fruits were poisoned, the water was poisoned, they all died. Yeah, so basically they destroyed everything. So what happened? Fear entered their heart. They became afraid of themselves and they lost faith in their own judgment, because apparently it could lead to this total destruction and death. Yeah. So the fear entered their heart. And then what came with the fear was the lie. The lie entered their mind. Because then, in order not to have to deal with this fear and to deal with the things that they have done, they tell themselves, oh, it wasn't me, or it's not that bad, or yeah, these kind of things. So they're starting to lie to themselves. And that means when the fear enters the heart and the lie enters the mind, that's when the darkness entered Midgard and the lie became the rule of law. Because also people wanted to be lied to. Yeah, they did not want to deal with this and face this. So they were actually grateful for others to lie to them and tell them, oh, it wasn't you, it's not so bad, and these kind of things. So that's how that happened. And this is how Svarogic cycle turned. And this is also the moment when they outsourced their own inner fears and guilt and darkness. Yeah, they created demons that would exist outside of them, that they could blame for everything. Yeah, it wasn't me, it was that guy. There's a very interesting movie called The Guardians of the Light, and so basically in this movie you have Santa Claus, you have the Easter Bunny, you have the Sandman, you have the Tooth Fairy, you have Jack Frost. And these are the Guardians of the Light, and they're fighting against this bad guy who is called Pitch, yeah, as in pitch dark. And this Pitch guy causes the children to have bad dreams. And in the end, this one child goes up to this Pitch guy, looks him in the eye, yeah, he faces him, and he tells him, I acknowledge you, I know you're real, but I do not fear you. Yeah, so this bad Pitch guy is the embodiment of fear. Yes, and this is what we need to face within ourselves. So anyway, so this is how Swarovski's cycle turned, and so the source is light. So every planet in the beginning is a light planet because everything begins with the light. So then Swarovski's cycle turned, and we entered the cycle of darkness, where the lie became the law. And this is what this is the world we live in today. And you know, when you have a cycle, yeah, it goes like this. So, cycle of light, yeah, and then here it turns into the cycle of darkness. And what do you have? You have this eternity chain, or this lying 8, and this is the eternal loop of light and dark, and light and dark. Yeah, so in the cycle of light, truth is the law, and in the cycle of darkness, the lie is the law. And when you're in the cycle of light, it doesn't mean everything and everybody is good. Yeah, it just means that the liars have to hide in the darkness. Yeah, and not the way it is now, where the truth tellers have to hide in the darkness to save their lives. Yeah, so you have this big eternal loop. Yeah, and Rumi says, beyond good and bad, there's a field. Meet me there. So, let's go on. The great night will wrap Midgard earth, and celestial fire will destroy many lands of earth. Where beautiful flowers once bloomed, great deserts will spread. Instead of birth-giving land, there will be noisy seas, and where the waves of the seas splash, high mountains will emerge, covered with everlasting snow. Humans will hide in caves from the poisonous rain that brings death, and they will start to eat animal flesh. Because the fruits of the trees are filled with poison, and many humans will die after eating them. Poisoned water streams will bring death to many children of the great race, and descendants of the heavenly kin, and thirst will bring suffering to the people. And by advice of the aliens that secretly entered Midgard earth, the people will kill each other for a drink of fresh water, for a piece of clean food, and they will forget ancient wisdom and the laws of the one Creator God. A great disconnection will come into the world of Midgard, and only the guardian sages of the sacred land of the great race will keep the purity of ancient knowledge, despite hardships and death. Yeah? So The moment the fear entered the heart and the lie entered the mind, darkness entered Midgard, the Swarogic cycle turned, the great disconnection took place. People became disconnected from God, and they became disconnected from one soul. God is the law, and truth is the law. So when you're disconnected from God, you are disconnected from the truth, you are disconnected from the law, you become lawless, you become an outlaw. And being disconnected from one soul makes you soulless. But Time River will once again bring changes in its flow, and the unification of the kins of the great race will start again, unified by ancient knowledge kept in songs and folk tales. Yeah, the songs and the folk tales, the temples and the sanctuaries, passed on by word of mouth and written on stones in temples and sanctuaries. Written on stone is also like written in your bone or in your DNA. Yeah, everything is encoded within you. In temples and sanctuaries, which is the heart and the soul, and inscribed in great Santis. Many wise skills will be lost from many kins, but they will remember that they are the descendants of the heavenly family, and nobody will be able to defeat them or take their freedom. And freedom is self-governance. And self-governance, as we already talked about from previous videos, is hard work. So freedom is not for pussies. Yeah, and only he who governs himself can exercise his free will. Yeah, because if you're governed by somebody else, you are exercising that other person's free will. Yeah, you think you're free, but you're not. So, many circles of life will pass Midgard Earth on Swarogic way. Human children will again build cities and temples in the name of those gods whom they remember. Life, righteous and happy, will return to the lands of the great race. But alien priests from the temples of the golden Taurus and priests of the murdered wanderer want to destroy their world and peace, for these priests live off the fruits of other people's work. Yeah, we've already established this fact that the lack of desire to work unites the aliens. Yeah, so in this big cycle of darkness that we've entered now after they destroyed Atlantis and Small Moon and their whole world and poisoned everything, so we're still in the cycle of darkness here now, and within the cycle of darkness there's always going to be little flashes of light, and within the cycle of darkness you always have good people and good things happening. So this is why, they can unite again and become strong again. But the alien priests, so they're still ruling, and they're waiting for them, and here they are. The alien priests from the temples of the golden Taurus. The parasites, the ones we created ourselves because we did not want to deal with our own fear. And alien priests will come to the lands of the great race under the guise of merchants and storytellers. And they will preach deceitful legends, and they will begin to teach unrighteous life to the people of the great race, who know not evil nor deceit. And many people will become seduced after getting caught in the nets of flattery and deceit, and they will exchange the world of the law pravi for 9 vices: fornication, lie, false pride, spiritlessness, non-fulfillment of duty, ignorance, indecisiveness, laziness, gluttony. And many people will renounce the sacred faith of their ancestors, and they will start to listen to the words of alien priests, which are unrighteous lies that lead human children astray from the way of the light forces. Alien priests will bring times of blood and fratricide to the wide scopes of the lands of the kins of the great race, and people will begin to live according to their faith. People of the race will ask alien priests for help and worship alien gods and the god of the world of darkness. Yeah, the god of the world of darkness. The world of darkness is the world where the lie is law. So, Sanskrit, sat, truth, the affix or prefix a or an, the negation, so ansat or satan is the truth negator, so he is then the ruler in the world of darkness. And the priests of the killed wanderer will comfort them with false pretense and capture their souls and riches of human children. Yeah, so then these are the priests of Satan. And they will declare the people of the great race slaves to the god that they had killed themselves. Yeah, the great wanderer. And they will tell them that suffering is good, for those who suffer will behold God. Yeah, and that's, of course, you have to be careful. Suffering does not equal suffering. Yeah, there are times that you will have to suffer to achieve a certain goal, and you will have to endure hardships. But it's not about suffering for the sake of suffering. Yeah, so you have to distinguish. Verse 91. For 7 life circles darkness will wrap the lands of the kins of the great race. 7 life circles. 1 life circle is 144 years. The Aryan-Slavic calendar also has 144 years, because 144 is a 9, and that's the number of God. And 7 life cycles are 7 times 144, that's 1008 years. Many people will die from metal and fire. Grave times will come for the nations of Midgard earth. Brother will rise against brother, son against father, blood will be pouring like rivers. Mothers will kill their unborn children. Hunger and spiritual void will cloud the minds of many people of the great race, and they will lose faith in justice. Yeah, so in order to lose faith in justice, first you have to lose faith in your own judgment. Everything starts always with yourself. Yeah, every lie starts with lying to yourself. Yeah. But the united God, Creator, and the heavenly kin will not allow the death of the great race. Revival of the great race and the awakening of the protection spirit of the sons of the heavenly kin will be brought by white dog, sent by gods to the sacred land of the great race. White dog is a year in the Aryan calendar. sacred land will be purified from the 1,000-year-long slave yoke of alien enemies, who sacrifice blood and flesh of their children, and poison the souls of the children of the heavenly kin with lie and unrighteous flattery. Yeah, even today, in the satanic cults today, which are the ruling families of the world, they have to sacrifice their firstborn child. Yeah. Celestial Phoenix will direct the supreme sage of the primeval fire to a son of the sage of the forest, from the kin of 3 moon. And supreme sage will train him to be a great wise sage, with the help of the light gods. And the great sage will revive ancient faith of their progenitors on the sacred land of the great race, and he will build temples and sanctuaries for all kins of the great race, and descendants of the heavenly kin would realize ancient wisdom and righteous life. And the minions of darkness will find out that their death has come, and they will spread lies about the great sage, and they will seduce his apprentices and neighbors with a glut of wealth and vicious bliss, so that they would not reach the spiritual heights of the world Pravi, and remain eternal slaves of the dark world, meaning forever staying disconnected, lawless, soulless, yeah? Eternal slaves of the dark world and its ruler. And they will do everything to destroy the great sage, so that ancient wisdom and faith of their progenitors would not be revived on the sacred land of the race. If you can hear that, that's the dog snoring, in case you're wondering. The forces of darkness will make all efforts to see that the sacred fire would never light up in front of the images and idols of gods and your sacred wise ancestors. Aliens will start to drive one nation against another, calling them to wars, in order that they would kill each other for possession of Earth's properties. Millions of lives will be taken by senseless wars for the sake of alien desires. For the more there are wars and deaths of human children, the more wealth the envoys of the world of darkness would acquire, and the more influence over the minds of many people of the great race. Yeah, hence this is a war on your mind. To achieve their goals, the dark forces will even use Fash Destroyer, and death-bringing fire mushrooms will rise above Midgard Earth. So Atlantis was the first nuclear war. Now, we will look into the head of one of these false priests through the eyes of one of the greatest psychological analysts, Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoyevsky. Great genius. He was born in 1821 in Moscow, and he died in 1881 in St. Petersburg. And we will now see how these false priests justify their actions and why they do what they do. And I am reading an excerpt from the book The Brothers Karamazov. And the funny thing, well, so when I did this whole series in German first, you know, I read the verses, and then, you know, I asked myself, okay, which piece of literature would go with this part? So, and the answer entered my mind pretty fast, and it was Dostoyevsky. So I went to one of my bookshelves where my Dostoyevskys are, and so I looked, and then I picked out this book, and this is The Brothers Karamazov. And the last time I read this book was over 3.5 years ago. Anyway, so I picked this book, I opened it, and I saw up here, I noted some page numbers. So I thought, okay, well, let's have a look. so I looked at the pages that I had written down here. And the very first one on the top, that was the part I was going to read. So apparently I had prepared this for myself 3.5 years ago. So then, of course, for this English version now, because I have this book in German, and so I went online and I searched for an English translation. And of course, with a German IP, we are banned from the Gutenberg library. Yeah, so with a German IP, you cannot access the Gutenberg library online. Okay, it's just a fact. So I searched, and then you have all these ebook companies, and then you have to make an account and whatever. I didn't want to do that. But then I came across this link by the University of Iowa, and coincidentally, of course, they had exactly this part that I needed, only those few pages they had there translated in English. Free to download. So, thank you, University of Iowa. And this part of the book is called The Grand Inquisitor. So in this book, The Brothers Karamazov, you have 3 brothers. You have Dimitri. Dimitri is a soldier who fancies women and drink. Then you have Ivan. Ivan is the intellectual type, intellectual nihilistic type. And then you have Alyosha. Alyosha is a monk-to-be who lives in a monastery. So, and Ivan, the intellectual nihilistic type, is reading to his brother Alyosha, the monk-to-be, a little story that he wrote. And this story is about an old man who speaks to a prisoner who's waiting to be executed in a auto da fe, which is public burning. So he speaks to this prisoner as if this prisoner was Jesus. And of course Alyosha doesn't understand, how can it be Jesus? Is he just, pretending for him to be Jesus? What's the deal with it? And then, the intellectual Ivan laughs at him, laughs at his closed-mindedness. And here we shall begin. Of course, I must raise my glass and say thank you to Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoyevsky. May you rest in peace by now. Thank you for your work and all you did. Yes. Skull. Oh, what's the Russian? Oh, I can't remember now. In Russian they say, it's the Russian word for health. They say health. And I've heard it many times, I've said it many times, but of course now I can't remember the word. So to your health, skull and Prost and cheers. So, so Ivan says, "Take it as the last," said Ivan, laughing. "If you are so corrupted by modern realism and can't stand anything fantastic. If you like it to be a case of mistaken identity, let it be so. It is true." He went on laughing. The old man was 90, and he might well be crazy over his set idea. He might have been struck by the appearance of the prisoner. It might, in fact, be simply his ravings, the delusion of an old man of 90, overexcited by the auto-da-fe of 100 heretics the day before. But does it matter to us, after all, whether it was a mistake of identity or a wild fantasy? All that matters is that the old man should speak out, that he should speak openly of what he has thought in silence for 90 years. And the prisoner too is silent? Does he look at him and not say a word? Alyosha asks. That's inevitably in any case, Ivan laughed again. The old man has told him he hasn't the right to add anything to what he has said of old. One may say it is the most fundamental feature of Roman Catholicism, in my opinion at least. All has been given by you to the Pope, they say, and all, therefore, is still in the Pope's hands. And there is no need for you to come now at all. So basically, we got it covered, Jesus. Just stay away. You must not meddle for the time, at least. That's how they speak and write too, the Jesuits, at any rate. I will leave in the description a link to a fantastic 2-hour documentary about the infiltration into all world institutions by the Jesuits. It's very interesting. Yeah, if you want to understand the world that you live in and the system and how it works, I highly recommend investing these 2 hours. I have read it myself in the works of their theologians. Have you the right to reveal to us one of the mysteries of that world from which you have come? My old man asks him and answers the question for him. No, you have not. Because we don't want to know. That you may not add to what has been said of old, and may not take from men the freedom which you did exalt when you were on earth. Whatsoever you reveal anew will encroach on men's freedom of faith, for it will be manifest as a miracle, and the freedom of their faith was dearer to you than anything in those days 1500 years ago. Did you not often say then, I will make you free? But now you have seen these free men. The old man adds suddenly with a pensive smile. Yes, we've paid dearly for it, he goes on, looking sternly at him. But at last we have completed that work in your name. For 15 centuries we have been wrestling with your freedom. But now it is ended and over for good. Do you not believe that it's over for good? You look meekly at me, and deignest not even to be wroth with me. But let me tell you that now, today, people are more persuaded than ever that they have perfect freedom. Yet they have brought their freedom to us and laid it humbly at our feet. But that has been our doing. Was this what you did? Was this your freedom? I don't understand again, Alyosha broke in. Is he ironical? Is he jesting? Not a bit of it. He claims it as a merit for himself and his church that at last they have vanquished freedom and have done so to make men happy. That's the most important thing today. People want to be happy. People want to have fun. People want to be entertained. For now, he is speaking of the Inquisition, of course. For the first time, it has become possible to think of the happiness of man. Man was created a rebel. And how can rebels be happy? You were warned, he says to him. You had no lack of admonitions and warnings, but you did not listen to those warnings. You did reject the only way by which men might be made happy. But, fortunately, departing, you did hand the work to us. You have promised, you have established by your word, you have given to us the right to bind and to unbind. And now, of course, you cannot think of taking it away. Why then have you come to hinder us? And what's the meaning of no lack of admonitions and warnings? Asked Alyosha. Why, that's the chief part of what the old man must say. The wise and dread spirit, the spirit of self-destruction and non-existence. The old man goes on, Great Spirit talked with you in the wilderness, and we are told in the books that he tempted you. Is that so? And could anything truer be said than what he revealed to you in 3 questions, and what you did reject, and what in the books is called the temptation? And yet, if there has ever been on earth a real stupendous miracle, it took place on that day. On the day of the 3 temptations. The statement of those 3 questions was itself the miracle. If it were possible to imagine simply for the sake of argument that those 3 questions of the dread spirit had perished utterly from the books, and that we had to restore them and to invent them anew, and to do so had gathered together all the wise men of the earth, rulers, chief priests, learned men, philosophers, poets, and had set them the task to invent 3 questions, such as would not only fit the occasion, but express in 3 words, 3 human phrases, the whole future history of the world and of humanity. Do you believe that all the wisdom of the earth united could have invented anything in depth and force equal to the 3 questions which were actually put to you then by the wise and mighty spirit in the wilderness? From those questions alone, from the miracle of their statement, we can see that we have here to do not with the fleeting human intelligence, but with the absolute and eternal. For in those three questions, the whole subsequent history of mankind is, as it were, brought together into one whole, and foretold, and in them are united all the unsolved historical contradictions of human nature. At the time it could not be so clear, since the future was unknown, but now that 1500 years have passed, we see that everything in those three questions was so justly divined and foretold, and has been so truly fulfilled, and that nothing can be added to them or taken from them. Judge thyself who was right, you or he who questioned you then. So who is Satan anyway? Who is the truth negator? When God is the law and the law is truth, and in order to enter God's kingdom, you have to recognize the lie. First you have to recognize. So you have to wake up, have to recognize the lie, and then you have to make a decision. And you have to make the right decision. You have to decide to follow the truth. Yes? So you have to recognize the truth negator, and you have to tell him to his face, I recognize you, I see you, I know who you are, and I'm choosing the truth. So Satan is actually, how do you say, he's actually the bodyguard, towards the kingdom of God. He's the one who's standing at the door, and you have to first, get by him. So he is the right hand of God. Yeah, the way to God only leads by the truth negator. Remember the first question. Its meaning, in other words, was this: you would go into the world and are going with empty hands, with some promise of freedom which men in their simplicity and their natural unruliness cannot even understand, which they fear and dread. For nothing has ever been more insupportable for a man and a human society than freedom. But seest you these stones in this parched and barren wilderness? Turn them into bread, and mankind will run after you like a flock of sheep, grateful and obedient, though forever trembling lest you withdraw your hand and deny them their bread. But you would not deprive man of freedom, and did reject the offer, thinking, what is that freedom worth if obedience is bought with bread? You did reply that man lives not by bread alone. But do you know that for the sake of the earthly bread, the spirit of the earth will rise up against you, and will strive with you and overcome you, and all will follow him, crying, who can compare with this beast? He has given us fire from heaven. So these false priests, these priests of Satan, they don't know who Satan is. They don't understand the concept. So they're actually the greatest victims of the whole scam. Do you know that the ages will pass, and humanity will proclaim by the lips of their sages that there is no crime and therefore no sin, there is only hunger? Feed men, and then ask of them virtue. That's what they will write on the banner, which they will raise against you, and with which they will destroy your temple. Where your temple stood will rise a new building. The terrible Tower of Babel will be built again, and though, like the one of old, it will not be finished, yet you might have prevented that new tower, and have cut short the sufferings of men for 1,000 years. For they will come back to us after 1,000 years of agony with their tower. They will seek us again, hidden underground in the catacombs, for we shall be again persecuted and tortured. They will find us and cry to us, "Feed us," for those who have promised us fire from heaven haven't given it. And when we shall finish building their tower, for he finishes the building who feeds them. And we alone shall feed them in your name, declaring falsely that it is in your name. Oh, never, never can they feed themselves without us. No science will give them bread so long as they remain free. In the end, they will lay their freedom at our feet and say to us, "Make us your slaves, but feed us." They will understand themselves at last that freedom and bread enough for all are inconceivable together. For never, never will they be able to share between them. They will be convinced, too, that they can never be free, for they are weak, vicious, worthless, and rebellious. You did promise them the bread of heaven, but, I repeat again, can it compare with earthly bread in the eyes of the weak, ever sinful and ignoble race of man? And if for the sake of the bread of heaven thousands shall follow you, what is to become of the millions and tens of thousands of millions of creatures who will not have the strength to forego the earthly bread for the sake of the heavenly? Or do you care only for the tens of thousands of the great and strong, while the millions, numerous as the sands of the sea, who are weak but love you, must exist only for the sake of the great and strong? No, we care for the weak too. They are sinful and rebellious, but in the end, they too will become obedient. They will marvel at us and look on us as gods, because we are ready to endure the freedom which they have found so dreadful and to rule over them. So awful it will seem to them to be free. But we shall tell them that we are your servants and rule them in your name. We shall deceive them again, for we will not let you come to us again. That deception will be our suffering, for we shall be forced to lie. Okay, let's have a little toast in between. To those poor false priests who have taken upon themselves such great sacrifice. This is the significance of the first question in the wilderness. And this is what you have rejected for the sake of that freedom which you have exalted above everything. Yet in this question lies hid the great secret of this world. Choosing bread, you would have satisfied the universal and everlasting craving of humanity, to find someone to worship. So long as man remains free, he strives for nothing so incessantly and so painfully as to find someone to worship. But man seeks to worship what is established beyond dispute, so that all men would agree at once to worship it. For these pitiful creatures are concerned not only to find what one or the other can worship, but to find community of worship is the chief misery of every man individually and of all humanity from the beginning of time. For the sake of common worship, they have slain each other with the sword. They have set up gods and challenged one another. Put away your gods and come and worship ours, or we will kill you and your gods. And so it will be to the end of the world. Even when gods disappear from the earth, they will fall down before idols just the same. You did know, you could not, but have known this fundamental secret of human nature. But you did reject the one infallible banner which was offered you to make all men bow down to you alone, the banner of earthly bread. And you have rejected it for the sake of freedom and the bread of heaven. Yeah, because only the strongest and the boldest will ever make it into the kingdom of heaven. Yeah, we don't need the pussies. Okay. Behold what you did further. And all again in the name of freedom. I tell thee that man is tormented by no greater anxiety than to find someone quickly to whom he can hand over that gift of freedom with which the ill-fated creature is born. But only one who can appease their conscience can take over their freedom. In bread there was offered you an invincible banner. Give bread, and man will worship thee. For nothing is more certain than bread. But if someone else gains possession of his conscience, oh, then he will cast away the bread and follow after him who has ensnared his conscience. In that you were right, for the secret of man's being is not only to live, but to have something to live for. Without a stable conception of the object of life, man would not consent to go on living, and would rather destroy himself than remain on earth, though he had bread in abundance. That is true. But what happened? Instead of taking men's freedom from them, you did make it greater than ever. Did you forget that man prefers peace and even death to freedom of choice and the knowledge of good and evil? Nothing is more seductive for man than his freedom of conscience, but nothing is a greater cause of suffering. Yeah, which is true for the weak. And behold, instead of giving a firm foundation for setting the conscience of man at rest forever, you did choose all that is exceptional, vague, and enigmatic. You did choose what was utterly beyond the strength of men, acting as though you did not love them at all. You who did come to give your life for them. Yeah, so this is another mistake that they're making. Yeah, so these false priests, the rulers of the world, they don't have the whole picture. Yeah, basically they're pretty stupid, actually. I mean, they're smart in the earthly ways, but when it comes to the greater picture, they really don't know anything. Instead of taking possession of man's freedom, you did increase it, and burdened the spiritual kingdom of mankind with its sufferings forever. You did desire man's free love, that he should follow you freely, enticed and taken captive by you. In place of the rigid ancient law, man must hereafter with free heart decide for himself what is good and what is evil, having only your image before him as his guide. But did you not know that he would at last reject even your image and your truth if he is weighed down with the fearful burden of free choice? They will cry aloud at last that the truth is not in you, for they could not have been left in greater confusion and suffering than you have caused, laying upon them so many cares and unanswerable problems. So that, in truth, you did yourself lay the foundation for the destruction of your kingdom, and no one is more to blame for it. Yet, what was offered thee? There are three powers alone, able to conquer and to hold captive forever the conscience of these impotent rebels. For their happiness those forces are miracle, mystery, and authority. You have rejected all three, and have set the example for doing so. When the wise and dread spirit set you on the pinnacle of the temple and said to you, if you would know whether you are the Son of God, then cast yourself down, for it is written, the angels shall hold him up, lest he fall and bruise himself. And you shall know then whether you are the Son of God, and shall prove then how great is your faith in your Father. But you refused, and would not cast yourself down. Oh, of course. Yeah. Oh, of course, you did proudly and well, like God. But the weak, unruly race of men, are they gods? Oh, you did know then that in taking one step, in making one movement to cast yourself down, you would be tempting God and have lost all your faith in him, and would have been dashed to pieces against that earth which you did come to save. And the wise spirit that tempted you would have rejoiced. But I ask again, are there many like you? And could you believe for one moment that men too could face such a temptation? Is the nature of men such that they can reject miracle, and at the great moments of their life, the moments of their deepest, most agonizing spiritual difficulties, cling only to the free verdict of the heart? Oh, you did know that your deed would be recorded in books, would be handed down to remote times and the utmost ends of the earth, and you did hope that man, following you, would cling to God and not ask for a miracle. But dog wants attention. Okay. But you did not know that when man rejects miracle, he rejects God too. For man seeks not so much God as the miraculous. And as man cannot bear to be without the miraculous, he will create new miracles of his own for himself, and will worship deeds of sorcery and witchcraft, though he might be 100 times over a rebel, heretic, and infidel. You did not come down from the cross when they shouted to you, mocking and reviling you, "Come down from the cross, and we will believe that you are he." You did not come down, for again, you would not enslave man by a miracle, and did crave faith given freely, not based on miracle. You did crave for free love, and not the base raptures of the slave before the might that has overawed him forever. But you did think too highly of men therein, for they are slaves. Of course, though rebellious by nature. Look around and judge. 15 centuries have passed. Look upon them. Whom have you raised up to yourself? I swear, man is weaker and baser by nature than you have believed him. Can he do what you did? By showing him so much respect, you did, as it were, cease to feel for him, for you did ask far too much from him. You who has loved him more than yourself, respecting him less, you would have asked less of him. That would have been more like love, for his burden would have been lighter. Well, true love is tough love. He is weak and vile. What though he is everywhere now rebelling against our power, and proud of his rebellion? It is the pride of a child and a schoolboy. They are little children rioting and barring out the teacher at school. But their childish delight will end. It will cost them dear. Mankind as a whole has always striven to organize a universal state. One world government, right? There have been many great nations with great histories. But the more highly they were developed, the more unhappy they were. For they felt more acutely than other people the craving for worldwide union. Yeah, so this is now how they're justifying their NWO plans. Because that's what people crave. The great conquerors, Timurs and Genghis Khans, whirled like hurricanes over the face of the earth, striving to subdue its people, and they too were but the unconscious expression of the same craving for universal unity. Had you taken the world and Caesar's purple, you would have founded the universal state and have given universal peace. For who can rule men if not he who holds their conscience and their bread in his hands? Yeah? Hence the mind control. We have taken the sword of Caesar, and in taking it, of course, have rejected you and followed him. Oh, ages are yet to come of the confusion of free thought, of their science and cannibalism. For having begun to build their Tower of Babel without us, they will end, of course, with cannibalism. But then the beast will crawl to us and lick our feet and spatter them with tears of blood. And we shall sit upon the beast and raise the cup, and on it will be written, Mystery. But then, and only then, the reign of peace and happiness will come for men. You are proud of your elect. But you have only the elect, while we give rest to all. And besides, how many of those elect, those mighty ones who could become elect, have grown weary waiting for you, and have transferred and will transfer the powers of their spirit and the warmth of their heart to the other camp, and end by raising their free banner against you. You did yourself lift up that banner, but with us all will be happy, and will no more rebel nor destroy one another as under your freedom. Oh, we shall persuade them that they will only become free when they renounce their freedom to us and submit to us. And shall we be right or shall we be lying? They will be convinced that we are right, for they will remember the horrors of slavery and confusion to which your freedom brought them. Freedom, free thought, and science will lead them into such straits and will bring them face to face with such marvels and insoluble mysteries that some of them, the fierce and rebellious, will destroy themselves. Others, rebellious but weak, will destroy one another, while the rest, weak and unhappy, will crawl fawning to our feet and whine to us, "Yes, you are right. You alone possess his mystery, and we come back to you. Save us from ourselves." Receiving bread from us, they will see clearly that we take the bread made by their hands from them to give it to them without any miracle. They will see that we do not change the stones to bread, but in truth they will be more thankful for taking it from our hands than for the bread itself. For they will remember only too well that in old days, without our help, even the bread they made turned to stones in their hands, while since they have come back to us, the very stones have turned to bread in their hands. For they will remember. Yeah, that's why the whole history is also a lie. Yes. Everything that people think that they remember, it's not true. Too well will they know the value of complete submission. And until men know that, they will be unhappy. Who is most to blame for their not knowing it? Speak. Who scattered the flock and sent it astray on unknown paths? But the flock will come together again and will submit once more, and then it will be once for all. Then we shall give them the quiet, humble happiness of weak creatures such as they are by nature. Oh, we shall persuade them at last not to be proud, for you did lift them up and thereby taught them to be proud. We shall show them that they are weak, that they are only pitiful children, but that childlike happiness is the sweetest of all. They will become timid and will look to us and huddle close to us in fear, as chicks to the hen. Then they will marvel at us and will be awe-stricken before us and will be proud at our being so powerful and clever that we have been able to subdue such a turbulent flock of thousands of millions. They will tremble impotently before our wrath. Their minds will grow fearful. They will be quick to shed tears like women and children, but they will be just as ready at a sign from us to pass to laughter, to shed and rejoicing, to happy mirth and childish songs. Yes, we shall set them to work, but in their leisure hours we shall make their life like a child's game, with children's songs and innocent dance. Oh, we shall allow them even sin. They are weak and helpless, and they will love us like children because we allow them to sin. We shall tell them that every sin will be expiated if it is done with our permission. That we allow them to sin because we love them. And the punishment for these sins we take upon ourselves. And we shall take it upon ourselves, and they will adore us as their saviors who have taken on themselves their sins before God. And they will have no secrets from us. We shall allow or forbid them to live with their wives and mistresses, to have or not to have children according to whether they have been obedient or disobedient. And they will bring to us, and we shall, and they will submit to us gladly and cheerfully. The most painful secrets of their conscience, all they will bring to us, and we shall have an answer for all. And they will be glad to believe our answer, for it will save them from the great anxiety and terrible agony they endure at present in making a free decision for themselves. And all will be happy, all the millions of creatures, except the 100,000 who rule over them. For only we who guard the mystery, shall be unhappy. There will be thousands of millions of happy babes, and 100,000 sufferers who have taken upon themselves the curse of the knowledge of good and evil. Peacefully they will die, peacefully they will expire in your name, and beyond the grave they will find nothing but death. Exactly, because they have not seen through the truth negator, right? So they're staying in the loop. But we shall keep the secret, and for their happiness we shall allure them with the reward of heaven and eternity. Though if there were anything in the other world, it certainly would not be for such as they. It is prophesied that you will come again in victory. You will come with your chosen, the proud and strong. But we will say that they have only saved themselves. But we have saved all. Yeah, you can only save yourself. Nobody else can save you. We are told that the harlot who sits upon the beast, the whore of Babylon, and holds in her hands the mystery, shall be put to shame, that the weak will rise up again, and will rend her royal purple, and will strip naked her loathsome body. But then I will stand up and point out to you the 1,000 millions of happy children who have known no sin. And we who have taken their sins upon us for their happiness will stand up before you and say, judge us if you can and dare. Okay, so, and now we're almost finished. I know it's a long video, but we're almost finished. So, and now comes the most important part, because now he's saying why they're doing this. But he does know that he's saying this. Okay. Know that I fear you not. Know that I too have been in the wilderness. I too have lived on roots and locusts. I too prized the freedom with which you have blessed men. And I too was striving to stand among your elect, among the strong and powerful, thirsting to make up the number. But I awakened and would not serve madness. I turned back and joined the ranks of those who have corrected your work. I left the proud and went back to the humble. Okay, so what he's saying, he tried to be like Jesus. He tried to go the path of the light towards the kingdom of God, which is, as we have already established, a very long journey, a very hard journey. And he says, I awakened and would not serve madness. But what he really means, he realized that he is too weak to make that journey. Yeah, so these false priests, they are all these things themselves that they tell the humans they are. They're the ones that are too weak. They're the ones that are vile. They're the ones who cannot handle real freedom. Yeah? And because they cannot be like Jesus, they cannot be the strong and the elect, they said, instead of saying, I'm too weak for it, they said, oh, that's madness. That's wrong anyway. I know it better. Yeah? And so now they're lying to themselves by saying that's madness. We have to correct it. Yeah? And they're the proud, they're the bad, and we are the good and the humble. Yeah? So they're lying to themselves first. They are denying the truth to themselves first. Yeah, so then I left the proud and went back to the humble. Yeah, meaning I left the strong and went back to the weak. Because the strong are the humble. Yeah, so this is where all this this turning upside down of the truth comes from. Yeah, they have to twist everything to make it right for them. Yeah, so that the weak think they're strong. So, what I say to you will come to pass, and our dominion will be built up. I repeat, tomorrow you shall see that obedient flock who at a sign from me will hasten to heap up the hot cinders about the pile on which I shall burn thee for coming to hinder us. For if anyone has ever deserved our fires, it is you. Tomorrow I shall burn thee. Dixie, I have spoken. So lying to yourself is treason against God. That's what they have committed. They have committed treason against God. They are the ones that are cut off. They are the lawless and they are the soulless. Yeah, so this elite, they are the slaves of their own lie. Ivan stopped. He was carried away as he talked and spoke with excitement. When he had finished, he suddenly smiled. Alyosha had listened in silence. Towards the end he was greatly moved and seemed several times on the point of interrupting, but restrained himself. Now his words came with a rush. "But that's absurd!" he cried, flushing. "Your poem is in praise of Jesus, not in blame of him, as you meant it to be. And who will believe you about freedom? Is that the way to understand it? That's not the idea of it in the Orthodox Church. That's Rome. And not even the whole of Rome. It's false. Those are the worst of the Catholics, the Inquisitors, the Jesuits. And there could not be such a fantastic creature as your Inquisitor. What are these sins of mankind they take on themselves? Who are these keepers of the mystery who have taken some curse upon themselves for the happiness of mankind? When have they been seen? We know the Jesuits. They are spoken ill of, but surely they are not what you describe? They are not that at all, not at all. They are simply the Romish army for the earthly sovereignty of the world in the future, with the Pontiff of Rome for emperor. Yeah, all roads lead to Rome. That's their ideal, but there's no sort of mystery or lofty melancholy about it. It's simple lust of power, of filthy earthly gain, of domination, something like a universal serfdom with them as masters. That's all they stand for. They don't even believe in God, perhaps. Your suffering Inquisitor is a mere fantasy. Yes. And now it is up to you to decide what is fantasy and what is not. On that note, thank you for listening, and to freedom and the truth and the overcoming of fear, because everything you ever wanted lies on the other side of fear. Prost. Thank you for listening. I see you next time.